last night because that was the first time that I've seen LeBron James emotional outside of him winning NBA championships. And I was crying so hard in my hotel room that I damn near drowned my own self, okay? I almost drowned my own self.
Cried other than when Kobe died and when he got the record, he ain't cried in the NBA arena like that during the game. So the fact that he was even locked in and tuned into that let me know, like, we might be at the end now.
I sure hope that wasn't the last time we saw LeBron in Cleveland, because that was a terrible game by him. He had 6 turnovers and 3 baskets, one of the worst games ever played in Cleveland.
Wednesday night in Cleveland, the moment that filled arenas, lit up timelines, and sparked quiet conversations that many fans still don't want to say out loud. Because what people witnessed didn't just look like an off night or fatigue or one of those games superstars bounce back from a few days later. It looked different. It felt different. For the first time in a long time, LeBron James didn't just seem slowed down. He seemed human in a way we haven't truly seen before. And that raises the question nobody is comfortable asking directly. What if this is the beginning of the end? Not the ceremonial kind of ending. Not the carefully planned farewell tour with standing ovations in every arena. Not the strategic contract decisions or roster adjustments that extend a legend's timeline. We're talking about something far more final. The kind of done that doesn't come with an announcement, but with a realization. The kind where the body stops responding the way it always has, where recovery takes longer than the schedule allows, where explosion turns into hesitation, and instinct can no longer outrun reality. This is the moment every all-time great eventually faces, when Father Time, who spent decades chasing from a distance, finally closes the gap and starts collecting what he's owed. For over 20 years, LeBron has defied aging, redefined longevity, and stretched the limits of what greatness can look like deep into a career. But Wednesday night didn't feel like defiance. It felt like resistance fading. Like the juice that fueled 2 decades of dominance has finally been squeezed to its last drop. And that's what makes it so hard to accept. Not because LeBron wasn't extraordinary, but because he made us believe extraordinary might never end.
Did you watch him last night?
It was one game.
Man, I ain't hearing that. He been having a multiple games like this.
I mean, before you torch me in the comments, just hear me out, because this isn't coming from random hot takes or reactionary headlines. This is coming from people who have watched LeBron James closer than anyone else alive. Analysts who have tracked every minute, every injury report, every postseason run across a 22-year career that has stretched longer than most players can even imagine. Former teammates who've seen how his preparation changed over time. Coaches who've witnessed the subtle differences in recovery, in rhythm, in energy, and even LeBron himself, through pauses, expressions, and moments that speak louder than any press conference ever could. The whispers aren't coming from outsiders anymore. They're coming from the inner circle. And when the people closest to greatness start speaking carefully, choosing their words, or sometimes saying nothing at all, that silence says everything. Because Wednesday night wasn't just another regular season loss for the Lakers. The standings will record it like any other defeat. The box score will look ordinary. Analysts will debate rotations, shot selection, and defensive breakdowns. But what happened went beyond basketball. It was something heavier, something emotional. Something we genuinely have not seen from LeBron James in 2 decades of dominance. For 20 years, we've seen frustration. We've seen intensity. We've seen anger after losses, exhaustion after finals runs, even relief after historic comebacks. But this was different. This wasn't competitive fire or championship emotion spilling over. This was something raw, something unguarded, something deeply human. The king cried. Not the tears of victory that follow confetti and cameras. Not the emotional release after proving doubters wrong. Not the powerful, triumphant tears that come from cementing legacy. These weren't symbolic tears. These weren't narrative-friendly tears. These were quiet, vulnerable, almost searching tears. The kind that don't ask for attention, but also don't try to hide. The kind that come when realization hits before acceptance does. When your mind understands something your heart isn't ready to admit. IT didn't look like pain from one game to IT looked like the weight of time, It looked like someone feeling the distance between who they've always been and who they might be becoming. And that's what made the moments so heavy. Because LeBron James has always projected control of his body, his preparation, his performance, his legacy. He has built a career on mastery. Mastery over pressure. Mastery over expectation. Mastery over time itself. But Wednesday night didn't look like control. It looked like confrontation. Like a man standing face to face with a reality that no training regimen, no recovery technology, no mental discipline can permanently outrun. For the first time, those tears didn't feel like they belonged to a superstar processing a moment. They felt like they belonged to a legend processing an ending. Not a confirmed ending. Not an announced farewell. Not a scheduled goodbye tour. But the possibility, the quiet, creeping realization that the body which carried a generation of basketball might finally be signaling its limits. That the machine that never seemed to slow might finally be whispering instead of roaring. And that's why Wednesday night felt different, because greatness doesn't usually fade in one dramatic collapse. It softens. It hesitates. It shows emotion where there was once only certainty. And sometimes it leaks out through tears that say what words never will. Real tears, vulnerable tears. This might be a tears.
Night because that was the first time that I've seen LeBron James emotional outside of him winning NBA championships. And I was crying so hard in my hotel room that I damn near drowned my own self, okay? I almost drowned my own.
Cleveland rolled out a first quarter tribute video, and on the surface, it looked like something we've all seen before. Teams honor legends all the time. Highlight reels, dramatic music, roaring crowds, emotional narration. It's part of sports culture. But this one didn't feel routine. It didn't feel ceremonial. It felt personal, deeply personal. The arena didn't just react, it responded. Every clip on that screen carried the weight of shared history. The kid from Akron, the chosen one, the hometown hero who delivered a championship that once felt impossible. This wasn't just a celebration of moments. It was a reflection of an entire era. And you could feel the shift in energy inside that building. It wasn't nostalgia. It was reverence. The kind of reverence people reserve for something they know they may never experience again. And then there was who showed up. Gloria James, his mother. The person who was there before the fame, before the expectations, before the world knew his name. She wasn't just another face in a VIP section. She was part of the foundation of his story. The whole family was there. Bronny was on the court, not just as a player, but as living proof of time passing. The next generation standing where the previous one once began. That visual alone said more than any tribute video ever could. Legacy wasn't just being remembered, it was physically present, watching, witnessing, absorbing the moment. And the crowd recognized that. The noise inside the arena wasn't explosive like a playoff game. It was something quieter, heavier, more emotional. People weren't just cheering, they were acknowledging. Almost like they understood they were watching something sacred unfold in real time. This wasn't welcome back energy, this was goodbye energy. Not the loud, announced, scheduled kind. The unspoken kind. The kind people feel before anyone says the words. The kind that settles into the air when everyone senses that something meaningful is nearing its final chapter. And LeBron felt it too. You could see in the way he stood there, absorbing everything. The lights, the noise, the images of his younger self flashing across the screen. This is a man who built his entire career on emotional control, on focus, on composure, so unshakable that even the biggest stages never rattled him. He's been the definition of mental armor for over 2 decades. Pressure never cracked him. Criticism never slowed him. Moments never overwhelmed him. But this one did. He broke. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just quietly. He wiped his eyes, trying to stay present, trying to stay composed, but something inside him had already shifted. He looked up toward the rafters, toward the banners, toward the history, toward the memories frozen above the court. And for a moment, he wasn't the unstoppable competitor anymore. He was just a man standing inside the weight of his own journey. The mask, The one he's worn through finals runs, injuries, expectations, and global scrutiny, slipped completely off. No performance, no control, just emotion, raw and undeniable. And in that moment, it didn't feel like LeBron was watching a tribute. It felt like he was watching his life play back in front of him. And maybe, just maybe, realizing that some chapters don't just live in memory. They quietly begin to close while you're still standing there trying to take it all in. Now, for the first time, it doesn't feel like speculation anymore. It doesn't feel like another hot take thrown into the endless cycle of sports debate, where every off night becomes proof and every slow stretch becomes a headline. This feels different because the conversation is no longer being driven by critics on the outside. It's being shaped by something shifting on the inside. For years, the idea of LeBron declining always carried an asterisk. People would say he looked slower, then he'd drop 40. They'd say the mileage was catching up, then he'd dominate a playoff series. Every time the world tried to write the ending, he rewrote the script. That's why the discussion never stuck. Decline was always theoretical, always temporary, always something he could outrun with discipline, conditioning, and sheer willpower. But what we're seeing now isn't just physical wear. It's recognition. It's awareness. It's the subtle but undeniable moment when a player who has outrun time for 2 decades finally looks over his shoulder and realizes time is still there, still walking, still closing the distance. That's what makes this moment heavier than anything we've seen before. It's not about missed shots or defensive lapses or the Lakers struggling to stay relevant. Those things have happened before. Great players have bad stretches. Teams go through chaos. That's basketball. What's new is the emotional shift, the quiet understanding that the runway is no longer endless. For most of LeBron's career, the future always felt open-ended. Even as he aged, the assumption was simple. As long as he wants to play, he can play. Retirement felt like a choice he would make whenever he felt like it, not something that would ever approach him on its own terms. But now, there's a sense that the end isn't some distant, abstract idea anymore. It has shape. It has presence. It feels visible in the way he reacts to moments, in the way he absorbs tributes, in the way he pauses just a second longer than usual, like someone who understands that experiences are becoming finite, and that changes everything. Because acceptance is different from decline. Decline can be fought. It can be trained against, rehabbed, managed, adjusted to, but acceptance is internal. Acceptance is when a competitor, one of the fiercest competitors the sport has ever seen, begins to acknowledge that even greatness has a closing chapter. That doesn't mean he's finished tomorrow. It doesn't mean he can't still dominate stretches, still produce brilliance, still remind everyone why he's one of the greatest to ever touch a basketball. But it does mean the illusion of endlessness is gone. The league, the fans, and maybe LeBron himself are starting to see the horizon clearly for the first time.
The thought, creeps in my mind more at 41 years old of when the end is and where's the finish line for us to hang this thing up. So how much juice I can squeeze out of this orange, and how can I continue to? I'm at a battle with Father of Time, and I'm kind of taking it personal.
Taking it personal, that's pride speaking. That's the voice of a competitor who has built his entire identity on dominance, control, and the refusal to ever look vulnerable. For more than 2 decades, LeBron James hasn't just played basketball. He has challenged the natural order of athletic aging. Every year that should have slowed him down somehow became another year he rewrote expectations. He turned longevity into mythology. He made 35 look like 28, made 38 look like 32, and convinced an entire generation of fans that time itself might actually bend around greatness. People didn't just believe he could play into his mid-40s. They genuinely entertained the idea that he could stretch this thing to 50 if he really wanted to. That's the standard he created. That's the illusion he maintained. But illusions don't collapse all at once. They crack slowly, quietly, in moments that feel small until you realize what they represent. And Wednesday night in Cleveland felt like one of those cracks spreading across the surface. 11 points, 6 turnovers, 3 made field goals. On paper, it's just a bad game. Even legends have them. But context changes everything. This wasn't just any arena. This wasn't just any night. This was Cleveland, the city where the story began, where a teenager carried impossible expectations and somehow exceeded them all, where championships were promised, heartbreaks endured, and history ultimately delivered. If that really was his final game there as a player, then what unfolded wasn't just statistical underperformance. It felt symbolic, heavy, almost poetic in a way that sports rarely are. Because when a player who built his reputation on control suddenly looks out of rhythm, out of sync, almost out of answers, people don't just see missed shots. They see friction where dominance used to live. And that's where pride enters the picture. Not loud, defiant pride, but the quieter, more painful kind. The kind that shows in body language, in frustration after turnovers, in the way a player reacts when the game doesn't respond the way it always has. For someone who spent 20 years proving decline was optional, every ordinary struggle feels personal. Every inefficient night feels like betrayal, not from opponents, but from the body that once obeyed every command without hesitation. That's what makes moments like this emotionally charged. It's not just losing a game. It's confronting the possibility that effort alone can't always restore what once came naturally, that LeBron has spent a lifetime outrunning limits. But Wednesday night didn't look like a man outrunning anything. It looked like a man confronting resistance, real, immovable resistance, in a place where his legend was born. And when dominance fades, even briefly in a place that remembers you as unstoppable, the contrast feels louder than any stat line ever could.
That wasn't the last time we saw LeBron in Cleveland because that was a terrible game by him. He had 6 turnovers and 3 baskets, one of the worst games ever played in Cleveland.
The box score doesn't lie, but numbers alone never capture the weight of a moment like this. Because the real story isn't about one bad night, one cold shooting performance, or one stat line that looks out of place next to a career built on consistency. The real story is what that night represents. It's the slow accumulation of where that no highlight reel can hide. It's the chronic sciatica that lingers day after day, not as a dramatic injury that sidelines you, but as a constant reminder that your body is negotiating with time instead of commanding it. It's the quiet adjustments, the invisible compromises that never show up in post-game interviews but shape everything behind the scenes. And then there's the detail that sounds small until you really sit with it. He gave up wine, not for discipline, not for image, not for performance optimization in the competitive sense. He gave it up because doctors told him it might help manage the pain in his back. Think about what that actually means. This is a man with unlimited access, the best specialists, experimental therapies, recovery technology that most athletes can only dream about. Hyperbaric chambers, advanced regenerative treatments, personalized biomechanics teams, nutrition scientists, sleep optimization labs, resources beyond imagination. Yet despite all of that, despite every cutting-edge solution modern medicine can offer, the adjustment that remains is something painfully human. Elimination, restriction, sacrifice, that's what makes it symbolic. Because when someone with every possible advantage still has to start subtracting simple pleasures just to function, it tells you something fundamental has shifted. This isn't optimization anymore. It's preservation. It's maintenance. It's survival within a body that no longer resets overnight the way it once did. Recovery becomes management. Comfort becomes strategy. Longevity becomes negotiation. And that realization cuts deeper than any stat line ever could. Because athletic decline isn't always explosive or dramatic. It doesn't always arrive as a torn ligament or a season-ending injury. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in stiffness that doesn't disappear, in routines that grow longer, in pleasures that get removed one by one because even small variables matter now. It's not just physical deterioration, it's lifestyle erosion. The gradual reshaping of daily life around the simple goal of staying functional enough to compete. For 20 years, LeBron James has represented control over his body, over his preparation, over the narrative of what aging in professional sports is supposed to look like. He didn't just resist time, he embarrassed it. But when the conversation shifts from performance enhancement to pain management, from maximizing output to minimizing discomfort, from indulgence to elimination, that's when the story changes tone. That's when dominance quietly gives way to endurance. And maybe that's the real meaning behind nights like the one in Cleveland. Not that he had a bad game. Not that the numbers looked unfamiliar. But that behind those numbers is a reality no athlete, no matter how legendary, can permanently escape. A reality where even limitless resources cannot fully restore what time gradually takes. A reality where greatness is no longer measured only by how high you rise, but by how long you can hold on while everything inside you slowly asks for rest.
Which, as you know anything about LeBron, one of LeBron's pleasures in life is drinking very fine, expensive French or California wine. He has quit drinking it because his therapists and doctors have told him he's worried about, whatever that does to sciatica. So
Which, if you really stop and think about it, is something we never imagined we'd say out loud. This isn't the LeBron we grew up watching dominate every inch of the floor. The LeBron we know would explode toward the rim like a force of nature, absorb brutal contact, and still finish through 3 defenders as if gravity itself bent to his will. He would glare at the referee, pound his chest, and then sprint back on defense like nothing ever happened. In crunch time, he didn't just participate in the moment. He controlled it. He dictated pace, imposed pressure, and carried entire franchises on his shoulders with a level of authority that felt almost unfair. That version of LeBron didn't just play basketball. He overwhelmed it. But that version, the relentless downhill force, the unstoppable physical specimen, the late-game executioner, is fading into memory. What remains is still extraordinary by any rational measure. 22 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists at 41 years old is something most players couldn't dream of even in their athletic prime. Shooting efficiently, orchestrating offense, still reading the game at an elite level. It's remarkable, historic even. But LeBron James was never judged by normal standards. He built a career so dominant that great stopped being the benchmark. The comparison has always been to his own impossible peak. And when the measuring stick is the most physically imposing, most consistently dominant version of LeBron we've ever seen, even excellence can look like decline. That's the cruel paradox of sustained greatness. The higher you rise, the more noticeable every step downward becomes. And now the whispers aren't whispers anymore. They're becoming acknowledgments. The end isn't hypothetical. It's visible. Even those who admire him most are beginning to speak with a tone that sounds less like confidence and more like acceptance. And then comes a moment that would have been unthinkable years ago. A current player, someone from the next generation, looking at LeBron not as an untouchable legend, but as a competitor who can be challenged, questioned, even dismissed. Enter Tyus Jones, the Cavaliers point guard, who in 2025 didn't just imply decline. He said it openly, on camera, to LeBron's face. In that moment, more than any stat line or highlight gap, signals the real shift. Because when opponents stop fearing what you were and start testing what you are, that's when time officially enters the conversation.
2025. As a role player or coming off the bench or something, but like he washed, man. I'll be the one to tell you. Yes, he is.
And that right there, that possibility, that emotional pull, is what makes the next chapter of LeBron James' career feel less like a basketball decision and more like the closing scene of a movie that's been running for over 2 decades. Because Cleveland isn't just another franchise for LeBron, it's the beginning, it's the promise, it's the weight of expectations that started when he was a teenager called the Chosen One, that it's where the journey began and where, in many ways, it already reached its most poetic peak in 2016. But sports history has a strange way of craving symmetry. Fans don't just want greatness, they want closure. They want endings that mean something. And what could be more meaningful than LeBron James finishing where he started? Imagine the narrative for a second A 41-year-old legend returning home one last time, not to dominate, not to conquer, not to carry a franchise on his back, but to guide, to mentor, to pass something forward. Not the torch exactly, but the blueprint, the mindset, the understanding of what greatness actually costs. That version of LeBron wouldn't be the unstoppable force anymore, that he'd be the architect, the stabilizer, the living memory of championship DNA in a locker room full of players still chasing their first taste of it. But here's the uncomfortable truth, and it's the one nobody wants to say too loudly. Coming back to Cleveland only works if LeBron accepts a role he has never truly played before. Not the savior, not the centerpiece, not the system, just peace. And that is the hardest transition any all-time great ever faces. Michael Jordan couldn't fully do it in Washington. Kobe Bryant never really got the chance. His body gave out before the Lakers rebuilt. Tim Duncan is one of the rare legends who quietly shifted into supporting greatness instead of being the sole engine of it. Now the question is whether LeBron James, the most controlled, most calculated career strategist the sport has ever seen, is willing to redefine what winning looks like for himself. Because make no mistake, his competitive drive hasn't faded. That part never goes away. The fire is still there. You see it in every reaction, every stare, every moment he realizes his body can't execute what his mind still sees clearly. That's the real battle now. Not LeBron versus opponents. Not LeBron versus Father Time. LeBron versus acceptance. Acceptance that dominance has a shelf life. Acceptance that legacy eventually shifts from performance to meaning. Acceptance that impact can exist without control. And that's why retirement isn't as simple as people think. Walking away for LeBron wouldn't just mean leaving basketball. That it would mean stepping away from the one place where he has always been fully, undeniably powerful. Where preparation equals results. Where effort creates outcome. Where the scoreboard tells the truth. Life after basketball is ambiguous, messy, uncontrolled on the court. LeBron has always had answers. Off it, the questions multiply. What happens next? Does he chase one more season, hoping the body give him just enough to summon one last postseason run? Does he orchestrate the emotional Cleveland return, giving fans the ending they crave while reshaping his identity in real time? Or does he choose something even more difficult, stepping away while he's still productive, still respected, still capable, before the game itself forces the decision for him? Because every legend eventually reaches the same crossroads. Leave while you're still great, or stay until greatness leaves you. Right now, LeBron James is standing directly in the middle of that intersection. And maybe that's why Wednesday night in Cleveland felt different. That it wasn't just nostalgia. That it wasn't just emotion. It wasn't just a tribute. That it felt like recognition. Recognition from the crowd, from his family, from the league, from LeBron himself. Not that he was done, but that the finish line is finally visible. For 20 years, LeBron James outran time. That he stretched the prime of an NBA superstar beyond anything we thought possible. He made aging look negotiable. That he made decline look optional. But now, time isn't chasing him anymore. That it's walking beside him. And the only question left is how he chooses to walk the rest of the way.